Okay. All right. I think we're ready. We're live.
Live from the
studios of somewhere. All right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean, today we're going to be discussing some different things. One is winning ad formula, a winning ad formula. That's what I entitled it.
That's very clever. Should throw secrets on front of that, like secret
winning ad secrets.
Yeah,
that's all I had to do.
Secret winning ad formulas. How about that?
I had like 15 seconds to put that together, and I can't believe I just left out the word secrets.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
All right, so we're gonna be touching on one ad that I sent a link over to Sean today. Very popular in the financial industry.
Yeah, you actually had this forwarded to you, right?
Right.
Because somebody was, it caught their attention. You know, you got a pretty good ad when people start forwarding it to each other.
Exactly.
Like they know it's a sales letter and they still forward it. Like that's usually a really good sign.
Sure.
That you've got a hot promo on your hand. So
Absolutely.
this is one of those. And this is from one of the best direct response companies on the planet for sure. So we'll be getting into it, and I guess doing a little screen share, maybe showing it. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on, and I can look at this thing and be like, I know exactly what they're doing and why they chose what they chose. This is where I got my starting copywriting. So, yeah, we can pick this apart.
It meets all the criteria for like,
absolutely.
You just go through it and break it down.
Yeah.
The first 5 minutes of it, and you're like, yep, check.
Yeah. It's this will probably do really, really well. And timing is a big part of it. It's perfect timing for this.
Absolutely.
A lot of things going on. So we'll break that down here in a bit. But first, before we do that, we're going to break down some beverages.
Absolutely.
And before we do that, you're going to spill the spiel from our sponsor.
So this segment of our show is brought to you by our friends over at the Original Craft Beer Club. Outstanding craft beers from the finest independent microbreweries in the US of A. One of the best ways to sample these unique beers is by letting our friends over at the Craft Beer Club or the Original Craft Beer Club do all the legwork and tasting by bringing you the best beer discoveries in America. And so why be disappointed? Sean, I'm asking you this. Why be disappointed by a beer you're just not sure about when you've got a guy like Sean McCool doing all the legwork? He's tasting it right before us, right on this very show.
Tough jobs. Somebody's got to do it. Sometimes it is a tough job.
He gets paid the big bucks for doing this. Yeah. So it's worth it because he's like the screener. Yeah. He's like the those people that actually lick ice cream.
For royalty, guys like so you're the king. I see what you're saying. You're saying you're the king, and I get to sample before you get to taste it, right? I'm just a little pawn peasant. Oh, he's expendable. Let him taste the beer. Gotcha.
That's a great job to have, though, man. Think about if all you're doing is like people pay money to
royal taster. Yeah, not bad. Well, this one, this beer that we have today is from Dark Horse Brewing Company. Now, I had the Reserve Special Black Ale a couple episodes that was really good. This one, I'm going to the opposite end of the spectrum. This is an India Pale Ale from Dark Horse Brewing Company, and this is the one that was started in the college dorm room back up in Michigan. So, jealous of these guys just from that standpoint, but. This beer in particular, the Crooked Tree India Pale Ale, 6.5% ABV, 48 IBUs. The Dark Horse Crooked Tree IPA is heavily dry hopped to give it a big aroma of pine, not my favorite, and citrus. The flavors are big, yet very balanced between fresh hops and malt. often described as grapefruit. The dark horse hops gives this beer an excellent citrus flavor that finishes dry, crisp, and clean. So anytime I see pine in the description, I get a little nervous. It's not my favorite beer flavor.
What do you think of when you think of pine? You think of mopping the floor, right? I mean,
either that or the little tree that hangs from your rear view mirror.
That's right.
In your car, right? The little pine scent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see. So what do you have over there?
Well, I'm kind of lame today, man. I don't have. I'm drinking a follow-up, another.
Hey, you gave that like a 4.6 on the last show, so I don't blame you. I mean,
I am happy to have this again.
Yeah.
So it's I gave it a 4.6 on the last episode, and it's every bit deserving of that score. But in all honesty, I picked up a 6-pack of this earlier this week. I thought I had a couple of different ones from another sixer from the holidays, but apparently we had some folks over New Year's, and I think that one
we had folks
that one disappeared.
Quote, we had folks over. Yeah.
Beer's
so this is like a Mr. Miyagi beer, apparently, according to the label. It's like
look at that with the little with the tree. What was that? The name of those trees? I forgot.
Bonsai tree.
Bonsai. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So I'm still only one season into Cobra Kai. Haven't started the second season. Have you gone the second season yet?
Yes. I have 2 episodes left of second season, and then of course
season 3 just dropped.
Yeah, season 3 just dropped, which I'm pumped about. So
yeah, I gotta catch up. We'll probably do that this weekend, maybe this evening. So because it keeps showing up on Netflix, because it's they just dropped the season, so it's trending now. But I gotta get back to the bonsai tree.
It's binge worthy.
I mean, I would buy a car just to get a bonsai tree. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Surely everybody else would too. So here's the, you mentioned pine saw. You didn't say pine saw, but you said floors, and that's what everybody uses pine saw for. This looks like pine saw. I'm just going to tell you. It looks like it's the same color as pine saw.
Bucket, dilute it with a little water and mop the floor with it.
Right? I mean, it's might be a little sticky. But so now this is interesting. So on the sheet, what did it say? 6.5. And on the bottle, it says it's 7.0.
Really?
Must have aged since they printed.
Very consistent there.
Yeah.
Get their facts straight.
All right. Well, that's funny. This does not smell as strong as what I just had. So anyway. All right. Well, cheers again.
See, this one is, now that you can see, dark. I didn't fast for it, but it's still got a pretty thick head, so good stuff.
Well, cheers again.
Cheers.
Ding.
Good as ever. Just as good as the last episode.
So this is interesting. This does not taste anything like most IPAs I've had.
Really?
I mean, it's got a little of that kind of weird, that aftertaste. It kind of hits the back of your tongue, and but it doesn't have that big overpowering first sip like a lot of the IPAs I've had. Yeah. Maybe it's because I had the regular pale ale, the American pale ale before this, so I'm kind of warmed up to it. Yep. But it actually doesn't have a lot of taste. It is very dry. It reminds me of almost like an Asahi, Japanese beer that's just kind of dry and it's not much there. So it's actually kind of a little bit bland, except for the finish. You get that aftertaste. So I'm gonna give this like a 2.5. Like there's not much going on here. It's just kind of okay. It probably something you could pound through a few beers on though, because there's not much going on. So
oh yeah.
So at 7%, you could probably down a few of them and not even realize it. So
sure.
But I give it like a 2.5. Not my favorite. But again, as longtime listeners know, we're more of a dark beer kind of guy anyway. But it's always good to keep trying these. I'm sure that someday I'm going to come across a pale that I really like. I mean,
that one on the last episode was 3. You gave it a solid 3.6, which is
so that's good. An American pale ale. So maybe I could try a few more of those.
Yeah,
and less India pale ales. So
all right.
So you've got a little sales letter for us to look at, and I'll let you set it up. But I'm ready to start looking at this thing and figure out what's going on. Why we think it's a winner. We don't know. Full disclosure, we don't know that it's a winner, but it probably is, knowing the people behind it.
Yeah, I would think so. So my father-in-law sent me this today, and it really intrigued me because not so much from the investment, because obviously this is a financial. So we're going to analyze, and this is a big part of Sean's background. That's why I sent it over to Sean today, and I wanted us to talk about it. But so my father-in-law likes to do. I mean, he's obviously he's gonna, he's an investor. So he sent me over this, probably wanting me to just getting some, I don't know, maybe just to share it with me. And I just texting back. It's like, well, from a marketing standpoint or from a copywriting standpoint, it's really good.
Yeah.
The video is really done well, but we're going to analyze it. We're going to look at it and talk about why it's so effective, and just some takeaways of it. Sean, you mentioned it's done by obviously a huge, well-known company that a lot of people in the financial news industry are very familiar with.
We can certainly say the name. So it's Palm Beach Group, which was founded by Mark Ford, also known as Michael Masterson. That was his pen name. So we've talked about some of his books before, things like that. But he became the copywriter he is, and the writer he is, through working with Bill Bonner at Agora. He's right-hand man to Bill Bonner there for a while, and then has been a long-time consultant with all of Agora.
Sure.
But probably right about the time I was at Stansberry, he started Palm Beach Letter, because I know a couple of the guys that I worked with at Stansberry went down to write for Palm Beach, probably for no other reason than Stansberry was in Baltimore and Palm Beach was in Palm Beach. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you're going to work at an office, you'd rather be in South Florida than Baltimore. So no, I probably should have went that route myself. That would have been because I did not stay in Baltimore very long. No. But yeah, this is one of those, you can just tell by looking at it, this will probably do really well. There's some other companies that I've worked with in the space that had not this specific, but it was a similar idea.
Right.
Bigger, total idea, not this particular idea, like on a micro level. And that promo always worked every year. They had this promo that worked year after year after year. Right. That kind of had the same feel. So I'll talk about that once we get going. Okay. Do you want to screen share the?
Yeah, I'm going to pull that up. Let's see here. Share screen.
Yeah, I'm not liking the aftertaste of this beer.
Uh-oh.
But, guys got to do what a guy's got to do.
That's right. All right.
All right.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, it's a little. Can you zoom in any? There you go.
Bingo.
All right. Just scroll back up to the headline. All right. So there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So the big headline that you see above the fold right away is the investment of the decade.
Right.
Now, I'm going to overanalyze. We're going to overanalyze this probably a little bit, right? Because we don't know the exact details and things like that. So there's a couple of things going on here that I see, right? So that's the first thing I see. It's an orange on a background, so it stands out a lot.
Right.
It's a very quick headline, and this is something I've been working with my copywriters on at the agency I'm at now, is really trying to boil down a headline that you can almost glance at and not even have to, it doesn't feel like reading, right? So some headline, like, there's nothing wrong with the long headline. John Carlton made them famous, not made them famous, but did them very well. Me personally, I like a glanceable headline.
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of get the whole thing at a glance. My brain instantly picks it up. And then if I want to elaborate, I go into the subhead, which expands on the idea, right? So I'm kind of torn here, right? So we've got the investment of the decade in quotes. So I'm assuming maybe somebody else said it. The quotes always help kind of give it some legitimate.
Absolutely. Powerful.
But at the same time, I'm like, the investment of the decade feels like one of those statements that you could say about just about anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But knowing this audience, investors want to know the investment of the decade. Like everybody wants to know the next Apple, the next Microsoft, the next Google, the next whatever, Facebook, because every investor, I don't care who they are and how well they've done, always feels like they've missed out on the past.
Right.
They always feel like they missed out on the big winners. They missed out on Bitcoin. They missed out on Facebook. They missed, and those are the big names, right? And those are moonshots. Like very few people actually pick those things early on, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody says they did. Very few people actually did.
Yeah.
But the writer knows that. So the writer, that's where you see right up in the pre-head. So the pre-head is that section above the investment of the decade. And it says, the Wall Street legend who picked Apple in 2003 and Bitcoin. What's in the news right now? Yeah. Bitcoin hitting new highs, right?
Right.
And Bitcoin in 2016 shares his number one pick for the 2020s.
Yep.
So what's going on here? Right away, we're name dropping and we're using what's called third-party credibility.
Right.
So we're using the power of Apple's name and the power of Bitcoin's name to give us weight and gravitas and, just it's like, oh, and we've talked about this before, Jonathan. Like, once I drop those names and say, oh, this is the same guy who picked Apple and Bitcoin, like, your brain can't unhear that.
No.
And you're going to assume that he picked Apple, and because we do what we do, you're going to assume he picked Apple at the perfect time. Right. He didn't get out. He stayed in the whole time, and now he's a multimillionaire. Like, I mean, we're just going to assume that this guy's much smarter than we are. We're idiots, and he's smarter. Like, that's just the way our brain works, because it's kind of got this bias that we're stupid and we need help from other people. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of how most people go through life.
Yep.
And the writers know that. So, I mean, just in the pre-head, you've got like just loads of sales proof. I mean, you could probably put an order button below that, and people would click. And my guess is,
I mean, it uses, that's a powerful example of authority right there. Wall Street legend picked Apple in 2003, Bitcoin in 2016. So that's two right there.
Yeah, and it's also borrowed authority, because you're borrowing from Apple, you're borrowing from Bitcoin.
Yeah, because you don't know who this guy is. There's no name
or what he's going to recommend. But but the way it's set up, it's like, well, this pick must be as good as Apple, and it must be as good as Bitcoin, or else he wouldn't have mentioned those. And all this is happening like as fast. You shared your screen there. You missed your screen.
Yep.
So you're getting distracted on the show, man. You're surfing.
I forgot I'm sharing. Okay, there we go.
So that's just the pre-head, and then you got the investment of the decade, which they'll probably quote later, I'm sure. As we get into the sales letter, you'll probably see that. And everybody wants that. Everybody wants the investment decade. So the promotion I was talking about earlier, I worked for a company called Street Authority, and they have this thing called Forever Stocks, and every year they would list their top 10 Forever Stocks, and these are like big dividend paying type stocks. And every year in January or December, like coming into the new year, they would release their top 10 Forever Stocks for 2016, 2017, 2018. I mean, they started doing this back at like 2010, and it just kept working every year, which is hilarious if you think about it, because they're called Forever Stocks, and the top 10, some of them stayed the same, but there were a few that changed every year. So it's like, it was just kind of funny that they changed. It's kind of like I went to a John Maxwell conference once, and he said, nobody knows this, but the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, he's like, we changed one of those with the third printing of the book. I was like, that's funny.
That's hilarious.
So he's like, just write your book, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
So investment of the decade, like Apple, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's in the news, so there's some timeliness there because Apple could seem a little bit outdated. So Bitcoin though is hot, it's current.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to borrow on that urgency that's going on right now around Bitcoin, the being in the news, all that kind of stuff. And then the subhead says right now there's a mad rush in corporate America. It involves Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook. I mean, these people are in the news for all kinds of reasons, but
for all the wrong reasons this past week, probably.
But they're all in the news. And that is one problem with financial. Like when you write financial newsletter promos, like the market can turn on you and the news can turn on you after you spend 8 weeks writing this thing.
Yeah.
But the fact is, those are still like from an investment standpoint, investors are going to see those names and be like, yeah, those are the big boys. And they weren't. And everybody who is reading this, the target audience is 65 plus.
Sure.
So everybody reading this remembers a world without all of those, right? And they've seen how the world has changed and how these 4 names have kind of taken over the world, right? So you have to also, when you're writing, you have to understand that your audience has a history and they've watched things come and go. And that's the biggest mistake I see young copywriters make and young marketers make, is they come up with these ideas that lack the perspective and stuff that, especially if they're writing to the older markets, the 50 plus, whatever, they think something's brand new and revolutionary, and they don't realize that people 65 plus have heard this like 40 times in their life.
Right.
And they've grown skeptical. But in this case, Amazon, Google, like investors have heard the investment of the decade every decade they've been alive.
Sure.
Since they started watching this stuff. So you have to throw a little bit more in there. And that is Amazon, Google, Facebook. And they're all betting on a new technology, the World Economic Forum, another name drop, right? It's not just me saying it, it's World Economic Forum saying it.
Right.
Projects will soar 295,762%. What do we call that? Specificity, right? Very specific number.
Yeah.
Over 7 years.
You could have easily said 300,000%, right?
Yeah.
But probably wouldn't have felt as credible as being very specific. 295,000, not only 295,000, but 762.
Yeah. Which must be it must be in a direct quote from the World Economic Forum, right? And here's something that I tell all the copywriters I work with to do is this next line, but it's not AI, the Internet of Things, or 5G. Because
dot. Don't forget the dot.
Yeah, the dot is critical. Yeah, doesn't work without that. And what's going on there is like your brain is already trying to figure out what this is.
Sure.
And it's making assumptions based on the data it already has. I mean, Mark Ford called this the categorical imperative. Like your brain is looking to file this away somewhere so it can move on with something that's less complicated and takes less energy to figure out. But if it can't do that, then it has to stay involved and it has to stay, up with what we're looking at here, right? So when you start saying it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, your brain's like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Then what is it? Now I got to crap. I can't just not know. I got to know what's going on.
Right.
It's like a riddle. When you can't figure out the answer to the riddle, it's like you can't sleep. But as soon as you know the answer, you're like, I'm out. That was cool. Interesting, but I'm out. I think I know what this is, but I don't know for sure. Now, honestly, this next line, I think you could take it or leave it. I'd love to see a split test without this line. Now playing for limited time only. Press play to begin. I don't know. I don't think anybody believes that. And I don't think they care at this point. I think the other part is good enough that you don't need that.
They're trying to use scarcity, but at this point, for something like this, probably a better way to use scarcity.
It just, it feels a little gimmicky, right? It feels like, oh, I'm trying to mimic a movie or something like that, right? It just didn't feel that authentic.
I will say, Sean, back up real quick to just to follow up with what your comments on the investment of the decade, the really bold headline in quotes, which I think is really good. We've talked about this in the past in terms of persuasion, hypnosis. Like whenever you make a bold statement like that, most people are going to think of it in terms of like when you hit somebody with a headline like that. Obviously, most people are going to say, "No, wait a minute, it's not. It's probably not the investment of the decade." But think about the purpose of this particular landing page and this sales letter is not to get people to buy, but it's to get people to be interested enough to watch this video down below.
Right.
So when you make a bold statement of investment of the decade, people are going to say, well, especially savvy investors, people that have been investing a while, they'll say, yeah, this is probably a hype, but it's not the investment of the decade, but it could be huge. Right.
Yeah.
So your brain automatically says no, but because you've brought people up to that level, then they're not going to just come all the way back down. They're just going to come down a notch or two and say, wait a minute, it's probably not the investment of the decade. It could be a really good investment, but I doubt it's going to be the investment of a decade.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that with hyperbole, right? And when you go completely over the top, then sometimes that works, or it does work because people will scale back, but they'll still end up, like you just said, they'll still end up higher than they would have on their own. Right. And they've got enough proof around it that it's like, okay, it's got to be pretty good. I mean, got all these big names, World Economic Forum, and all this is happening like in splits. I mean, in seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we've spent literally 10 minutes talking about this, and this is, there's our literally days.
At that rally, the president took the stage after reiterating the falsehood that we won this election.
I was trying to pull up the video. That was not the video.
Wrong video.
Wrong video. Here we go. I was trying to cue it up for us so we could talk about it, but I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can go ahead and cue it up, but I'm also going to pull up the transcript. Can you scroll up a little bit? This is interesting. Right below the video, go up a little bit. I mean, the other way down, I guess. My bad. It's like the AC. Do you turn it up or down? I don't know. So like underneath here, it used to be they only had the read transcript like it on an exit pop, and then they got see offer. Like it's interesting. Those two are hyperlinked where you can go straight to the transcript. You can go straight to the offer instead of watching the video. I don't know if they're testing that or what, but that's an interesting thing. So I'm going to hit read transcript so I can just kind of keep up.
You know what? I didn't even notice the read transcript. We could just let's see. Let's pull that up and see what that says. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's just go through instead of we don't have to cue up the video.
Yeah, I mean, the video is cool because they do some B-roll footage and some other stuff. That's kind of the new way a lot of these VSLs are going. They're very they have a lot of very cinema-like. They're trying to get it more entertainment-like instead of just the white slide, black text on white slides. But we can get the gist of what they're doing on this. So starts out, hi, I'm Tiki Tawari, and you probably wouldn't do this. I wouldn't say never, but you wouldn't do this in just a regular sales letter. But because it's a video and this is a script that we're reading now, it's weird if you don't kind of introduce yourself pretty early. Right. I want to thank you for joining me on this special broadcast. Your timing couldn't be better. That's what every investor wants to hear. That seems like a throwaway line, but it's not. Right.
By the way, full disclosure, this whole ad was introduced back in early 2020, and it's still running. Our timing is still good.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. So interesting. So it must be doing really well if it's been running for a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I know what the technology is. I mean, if I were to guess right off the bat, I would say it's blockchain, but I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess. And that's gaining a lot of ground right now. So this may have come back out. It may have not been the right time at the first of the year, last year, but it's definitely the right time now because people are really starting to talk about this because of, everything that's happened with shutdowns and Parler and all this other stuff. It's hey, there's got to be a new way to put stuff out there that's secure and safe and all this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Which is what blockchain is all about. It's not about just crypto. It's the underlying technology that drives Bitcoin. That's what really most investors, or not investors, analysts for the long term, they're more excited about blockchain than they are actually cryptocurrency because of all the potential things. But yeah, your timing couldn't be better is something that that's the holy grail of investing for most people. They all think it's about timing, right? And they want to believe it's about timing because if they just could have gotten in at Apple, if they could have just gotten in at Facebook at the right time, if they could have just gotten in at Bitcoin at the right time, all their problems would be solved, right? They'd be a millionaire. They wouldn't have to worry about stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, because we've talked about the because statement, right? It's like, as soon as you say one thing, then say because, it makes it even more true. Today, you're going to get the inside scoop on a groundbreaking new technology. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's ramp that up a little bit. One that's transforming the entire world around us. That's
a bold statement. Yeah.
That's a big claim, right? So what do you do after you make a big claim? You got to back it up. Already, companies like FedEx, UPS, Penske, so now they've dropped 3 new names that weren't in the headline or subhead, are changing the way they ship products behind the scenes because of it. Car manufacturers are quietly spending $30 billion in a race to implement it. It's been called a game changer for utilities. So we're talking about shipping companies, car manufacturers, and utilities. What in the world is this technology that's really is transforming the entire world around us, right? So that was the claim, in transforming the entire world around us. And here's like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Shipping, manufacturing, utilities, and healthcare. I mean, that's 4 like major sectors of our industry that it's transforming. So that's the proof that they use to back up that one claim that it's transforming the entire world around us.
Yep.
The technology set up, by some estimates, it could help save 400,000 lives a year and slash healthcare costs. It's interesting that they went a little deeper on healthcare, which would make sense for this target market.
Sure.
Because they're on Medicare, a lot of them. They're going to the doctor on a regular basis, so they're seeing kind of the inside of hospitals, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And then here's a lot of the readers of financial newsletters tend to be conservative. So, and without the government having to pitch in a cent, that's going to hit that worldview.
Free markets taking care of it, right?
Yeah, because we saw when I would write financial newsletters, we saw that if you made an investment that was really based on like a lot of government backed stuff, like solar, it didn't do well because they didn't want to take part in something the government was subsidizing.
Right.
It was just a core worldview belief that they felt was bad.
Yeah.
Same thing
because
with
what happens is you base it off of one administration's big on one particular technology. The next administration comes in that may be a different party, and they're like, nope.
And that goes back to what we said. They have life experience where they've seen these administrations come and go. One likes one thing, one likes the next. They don't want to.
Absolutely.
Plus, they just don't think the government should be, behind private sector stuff.
Exactly.
So at this point, the reader may be thinking it's too good to be true. So they immediately address that objection. Look, I realize this may all sound too good to be true, but as you will see, future pacing, there's a reason this technology is different. People want new and different from anything we've seen before. Now we're going to get into some story, right? Now we're going to get into some credibility, like who am I, why you should believe this, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of thrown out the line hook. I've set the hook. Now I'm going to start reeling them in, right? So how does this guy Tiki know all this stuff? Well, in the past 2 years, I've traveled to 14 different countries. Well, that's impressive. Most of the readers of this probably have been to 2 or 3 countries max.
Sure.
Flown 300,000 miles, met with 4 billionaires. I've never met with a billionaire, so that's kind of cool. Yeah. I even moved from from the mountain home I love in the Poconos just to get the inside. Wow, he moved just to get the inside scoop on this innovation.
That's right.
That's serious. And what I discovered is that, and then here's what's interesting. Watch this. I haven't even read this, but I kind of know what's coming. This new technology has already proven so important to our national security that President Trump has issued a special executive order on it. So here's oh, wow, it must be important. Right now, no fewer than 9 different government agencies are working to ensure it reaches its full potential.
And then
and it gives a little bit of the, there's the stat from the subhead. So they paid that off. It's got a chart. It's an interactive chart. That's kind of cool. It moves, 295,762%. That's huge. Yeah, no kidding. That is huge. And Wall Street is also scrambling to get involved. So they haven't told you anything new really so far, but it just keeps layering on, right? It's a little bit of reveal, just a little bit of reveal, a little bit of reveal. And that's what keeps you reading, because you don't just come out and say, this is blockchain or this is whatever it is. It's just a little reveal at a time that keeps you reading, keeps you going, keeps you in. And, you feel like you're learning a lot more, but you're actually learning just a little bit more. But to the brain, it's new information. So it feels like a lot more information.
Yep.
And that's one of the secrets of really great copywriting, especially long form copywriting, is that it just lets it out over time, kind of slowly, but not too slowly, because you don't want to get bored with it either. So, I mean, we could go on, but I
think one of the things, I'm going to back up here, Sean. One of the things you touched on is the importance of any copy, and you can back me up on this, but when you're writing copy, it's important to get inside the mind of your reader.
Yeah.
And you talked about pacing earlier, where he says, look, I realize this may sound too good to be true. That's a really important statement.
Yeah.
Because it really makes him kind of look at it from your perspective. Like, so far, everything he said sounds great. And then he inserts that look, I realize this may sound too good to be true.
Yeah. And we call that one word, one phrase for that is the Achilles heel, where you kind of admitting, oh, maybe it's kind of admitting a fault, right?
Right.
Okay. Hey, I know this sounds too good to be true.
Sure.
But then they immediately go into but, and the word but is very intentional. Like, if I want to contradict a statement I just said, then I use the word but at the beginning of the next sentence.
Right.
If I want to add on to what I just said and confirm what I just said, then I would use the word and at the beginning of the paragraph.
Yep.
Right. So if you look 2 lines above, it said by some estimates, it could save 400,000 lives a year / healthcare, and without the government having to pitch in a cent. Right. Because I want to emphasize that what I just said is important and true and right. And there's even more that's good. On the next line, I say, look, or he says, look, I realize this may all sound too good to be true, but, which means it's not. What I just said is not true, because it is true. So it's not too good to be true.
Right.
As you will see, there's a reason this technology is different from anything we've seen before. So and this is what a lot of copywriters miss. Like, these lines, I promise you, were slaved over.
Oh, absolutely.
And read over 25, 30, 40 times. To get just the right flow, to get just the right, and the first draft would probably be a little rough, but then as they go, and even if you've been writing for a while, you get closer and closer to what this is, but there's still these little tweaks you make.
Yeah.
When I was at Stansberry, one of the guys, every morning he would start a new draft, and he would copy the Word doc, and he would name it whatever he was working on, -1, -2, -3, -4 for every day that he was working on it. So he had by the time he finished the promotion, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to write a promotion, 4 to 6, if it's depending on what it is. So say 6 weeks, 5 days a week, there's 30 to 40 drafts.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see the evolution of that. And like, yeah, this stuff is like every word has to pull its weight.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the rhythm and the way it sounds when you read it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, everything is important, especially in the headline and the lead. Like all this stuff is super important. It's got to really want you to make you want to keep reading. Mm-hmm. And you kind of change direction. So we'll keep going a little bit, but it says that's huge. And also Wall Street is scrambling to get involved. Mm-hmm. This is part of the reason I recently traveled to secret meeting rooms in the heart of America finance in Manhattan to show you what's been happening behind the scenes. Everybody wants to be behind the scenes.
Sure.
Everybody wants to be in the room they can't be in because they think that's the secret to investing, right? That's how the insiders make money. Even if it's illegal, that's how they make money because they know something that you don't know.
Yep. And
that is a key to all investment promos is that we know something you don't know and that the average person on the street doesn't know. Mm-hmm. Here's the other thing, and I'm a firm believer in this, like the entertainment part of financial newsletters is that people want to read these things. I always envision people like if my sales letter was good, I would envision that people would go to like a cocktail party or coffee at Hardee's with their buddies the next morning.
Right.
And they would retell my sales letter for me if it's good.
Yep.
They'd be like, hey, Jonathan, did you know there's like this new technology? And like, right? Because they want to be the smartest guy at the table, right? Mm-hmm. And if they've got something cool and interesting that their buddies don't know about, they're going to kind of talk about it. And it's hard to talk to be able to share that if you're not going to buy and talk about what it is. Yeah. And people will go out and they'll quote parts of this. They'll be like, FedEx, UPS, Penske, man, it's changing the way they ship products. Like they'll pull sections of this, not even print it out, but just kind of subconsciously, they'll key in on these different names and things like that. And they'll tell their buddies about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's when you have a good promotion. Yeah. Is that people will like take it and like start telling the story that you told them. Absolutely. Which is kind of, what we talked about on our last episode and lots of other episodes is storytelling. It's how humans communicate and learn and share cool stuff, right? It's through story. So this is like a really cool story of this guy who's been doing this research and he found out the investment of the decade. And who wouldn't want to share that and look like the smartest guy in the room? So so 20 years from now, I could say, hey, Jonathan, remember when I told you about that thing that was the investment of the decade and you bought it and you got rich and we're both here on a yacht now? Yeah. That was me, man. Yep. That's the crazy stuff that goes through our brains on a very like subconscious level. Like we never consciously think about that, but that's kind of what's going on. You want to be the hero.
Sure.
You want to be the guy that discovered this. And you kind of get to do that vicariously through a promotion like this.
Yeah.
You get to be the smartest guy in the room.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things too, so for anybody that's like, I think he does a really good job of in this video and I'll pull the transcript back up, but we talked about scarcity earlier, probably not a good use in watching the video, kind of dated where that video, most people know.
Yeah.
But here's a good use of the scarcity, which, we talked about Cialdini. If you haven't read Principles of Influence, you need to get that book. But here's an effective way of scarcity. Let me add this up here, going back to the transcript. So to me, this is an effective way to use scarcity in telling a story. So he talks about the fact that if you had invested $1,000 in Amazon back in 1997, today you'd have 1.2 million, right?
Yep.
I mean, that'd be nice little return on your $1,000 investment. But get this, here's what's cool. And I love the way he uses. Well, this is just the transcript, but I don't know I can't remember if this is in the video or not, but he adds some graphics to back it up. But get this, if you had waited just 5 months later to put that same $1,000 down, well, today your stake would only be 340,000, right?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah.
So that's what is he saying? Like the longer you wait, the less you're probably going to make off of this investment, the more you think about it. And I think that's an effective way of using, scarcity in
the urgency. I mean, he literally says after that line that you read, but you have to act quickly because,
right,
like past opportunities, this one will run away too.
Right.
And then he shows those two charts back to back. I mean, 1.2 million versus 340,000.
Yeah.
That's a big difference for
Huge.
5 months. Like, It's like, oh crap, I guess I better. And then he does the math. I love that he does the math too. That's $850,000 left. And then it's kind of this. And while that's certainly nothing to sneeze at, I don't care who you are. $850,000 is a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, it's more than sneezing at money. That's a lot of money. So and it's another thing. Like, he doesn't assume that you're following his train of thought. He says exactly where you need to be thinking. It shows why it's critical. If you're going to secure your stake in this decade's top investment, you must act decisively. So the writer doesn't assume here that you got the point with the example. He actually writes another sentence that says, look, if you're going to secure your stake in this decade's top investment, which is a reiteration, right? Decade's top investment is another way of best investment of the decade, investment of the decade. So they're kind of ringing that bell that got you to start reading in the first place.
Right.
In slightly different words, but the same idea. But that's the thing. Like, you can't just assume that your reader is getting what you want them to get. You have to say it. And you have to say it over and over and over and again. Yeah. The other thing I want to point out about these charts, because I see this mistake all the time with people. So they've got a chart of Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, and the Bitcoin, and they do the two charts with Amazon to show the urgency and scarcity you were talking about. But notice how simple the charts are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can just glance at them and know exactly what they're saying. A lot of people will put graphics in that have way too much going on.
Absolutely.
And this was something that was drilled into our head when I was at Stansberry. Is like, the chart has to be super simple. So how
simple is this? I mean, look, $1,000, 1997,
up and to the right. That's like, you can glance at that and you don't even have to read the numbers. Like, you just glance at that and you're like, up and to the right. It's like every investor knows what that means.
Yep.
So that's important. Like, all your stuff has to be like glanceable. Like, you just have to be able to glance at it and get, if you're going to include an image, it should register immediately.
Right.
If you have to explain the image, it's too complicated. Like, break it down. Like, they didn't notice in the Amazon example, right? They have two graphs to show that example. They didn't put it in one graph. Yeah. They could have, but they didn't.
Right.
They put it in two separate graphs so that it was super easy to register.
Right.
Little things like that. That's the kind of stuff that makes a huge difference when you're putting your proof out, when you're sharing all this stuff. And and the other thing I think I see a lot of from writers is they're afraid to say the same thing again. So like this page I'm looking at now, it's like, as I mentioned earlier, the World Economic Forum projects it will grow an astonishing 297. That's the third time they've mentioned that stat.
Right.
Between the headline a little bit earlier and now this point. Like, you can mention stuff more than once. In fact, it's good to. Like, the repetition gets it going. You don't want to repeat everything because then it gets boring, but you can repeat key elements several times.
Right.
And it just keeps going and gets better and better. And like, you get deeper and deeper. You get the testimonials, you get the, the Buffett goes all in, like, like all these different things. Then they give it a name. right? So now they a little bit later, if you go down to where it says Genesis on the graph, right below that,
right
there.
There we go.
So this is where they're going to start giving away a little bit more, but you don't want to give it all away yet. So you got to come up with a name for it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the name in quotes comes into play, right? The invention I'm going to share with you today, which I refer to as Genesis, it's just a made up name.
Yeah.
Right. So he says, I refer to as Genesis. That makes it compliant from a legal standpoint, like all these other things. For a reason that will become clear shortly, is set to grow 32 times more than 5G.
Mm-hmm.
So you see like Internet of Things, AI, 5G, and then Genesis is like off the chart bigger than everything else.
Yeah.
Like, again, he said Genesis. Genesis is the biggest dot. I don't even need to know what these other things are. This is the biggest. That's huge. Like, you know, he doesn't leave you to guess it's huge. He says that's huge.
Right. And to back it up, as you mentioned earlier, Sean, he's got testimonials. Look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the video, where you've got testimonials where someone's turned 12,000 into $1 million, right?
Yep. And then right below the Genesis chart, there's, now we're going to start taking names that the audience knows. Mark Andreessen is a known name.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The most important technology since the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big claim.
That's pretty bold. Yeah.
Right? Wall Street Journal. And by the way, these were both quoted. Both of these phrases, most important technology since the internet and a foundational technology, were quoted in the subhead above the video, above the video box, right? So again, we're repeating what we said up top because we know that's what hooked them. I mean, if they're reading here, that's what hooked them. So we're going to say it again. We're going to remind them. So
if we want to be really powerful, we'll include the most famous investor ever, which is who?
Warren Buffett. You got to have him on.
Right.
I mean, foundational like the internet and electricity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big claim.
Right.
If it's, again, going back to your point, if that's half true, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you start thinking foundational, like electricity. Wait a minute. That's pretty big. Then you start, when you include Warren Buffett, which most people know that he's not big on technology. I mean, he likes traditional businesses that, most people that know Warren Buffett, or have read about him, know that he invests in companies that have long-term growth. They're not like, he's not big on like high tech companies or, fast growth companies.
Well, let me show you a little sleight of hand that's going on here. Some copywriting sleight of hand, right? So where in that section you're at.
Yep.
So you kind of talk about Buffett. Everybody knows he's the greatest investor. So it's like, so then they say, see this paper? What you're looking at, the top 25 holdings. So my guess is what happened with the copywriter is he was like, crap, Buffett hasn't invested in this.
Right.
I wish he had, but he hasn't yet. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I make it sound like Buffett is invested in this? Because that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, Buffett's invested in these 25 companies and he lists them all out on the side. And then he says, but here's what's interesting. And this is where research comes in. This is why it takes so long to write a really good promo, is because you have to dig into all this research. Like you literally have to pull up 12, all the schedules and dig into, quarterly reports and all this other stuff. 21 companies have all invested in Genesis technology. Right? That's 21 out of 25, over 80% of Berkshire's top holdings. But did CNBC tell you this? Of course not. Blah, blah, blah. But recently, so this is like the key, like sleight of hand phrase here. But recently, beneath the surface, Buffett has quietly become one of the world's top backers of Genesis.
Yeah.
He may not even know what Genesis is, right? He probably does, but the way they did that, the way they set that up is just brilliant, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, he's investing in these things, and these things invest in Genesis. It goes back to our basic algebra, right? If A plus B equals C, and that whole formula there.
Sure.
And if A equals B and B, what is that? B equals C, then A equals C. That's it.
Right.
It's hard to do after a couple beers. And that's what he's doing. It's that basic equation. Like, okay, if Buffett invests in these companies and these companies invest in Genesis, my made up name for this, then sort of kind of Buffett is investing in Genesis.
Right.
I mean, it's brilliant.
He's a huge believer.
Yeah.
Even though he may not be directly, which, like you said, I'm sure he's aware, obviously, of this technology, but
it's not why he bought those companies.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
All those companies he bought before this probably ever came about. It just happens to be that,
right.
This is a technology all these companies happen to want and use and all that kind of stuff. But it's just a brilliant way to do it. And then they start dropping names again: Apple, Amazon, PNC Bank, Goldman Sachs, MasterCard. Like, it's just name drop after name drop of people. And then you get into top universities: Cambridge, UCLA, Yale, Berkeley have all partnered up to work on Genesis. Like, and how do you, this is research, right? You start finding out, like, is there a study anywhere in the world about this technology? And you can then say they're working on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's blockchain or autonomous vehicles or whatever it is, usually every university in the world is working on whatever the hot new technology is.
Right.
I mean, they just are. And as you do more and more of this kind of writing, you realize that kind of stuff, and you can write this stuff faster and faster, and you kind of know those tricks and all this stuff. But that's, we could go on, and I mean, this is a long promo.
Yeah.
But it just kind of keeps unfolding like that, right? And it talks about the adoption curve and like where you are in the adoption curve, more scarcity and urgency. Hey, we're right here before the takeoff phase. I've used this exact thing in a promo before.
Mm-hmm.
The innovation, takeoff, and saturation phase. Nobody wants to invest at the innovation phase because it's super scary and bumpy and there's not much movement. Sure. But everybody wants to be right at the left edge of that bell curve where it really takes off.
Right.
That's where you want to be because that's where the fast money is made. And I've used that exact same idea in a promo before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just keeps going, all kinds of stuff. So really good. Like, it's just, and it's interesting, right? That's another key thing. It's like, it's not boring. It's like, what is this? I got to know. Yeah. They just keep layering it on, ratcheting it up. And the thing is, you probably won't even know. Like, let's see where they say what the free report is. Like, you think it feels like they're going to tell you, right? Because they keep peeling off layers, but you don't ever actually know what it is. There's a subhead that says Genesis technology revealed.
Well, it does say report. You get the opportunity. So it
does say blockchain. So it does give it away.
Yeah.
But it's not going to tell you which companies to invest in.
No.
That you have to buy the subscription to get.
You have to be a subscriber to the Palm Beach letter, right?
Right.
That's the ultimate.
So that's something, that's something that people need to understand is like, you give away the big idea, but you don't give away the smaller idea, which is what they'll be willing to pay for, the more unique idea, right? It's like, okay, blockchain is cool. You sold me on blockchain, but how do I actually make money off of it? Well, you got to get this report.
Absolutely.
It'll say the top 5 blockchain companies to buy from or something like that. Yeah. It'll be somewhere in that idea, or the number 1, blockchain stock for moving forward. And then there'll be bonuses and other stocks and all this other stuff.
Yep.
It all unfolds brilliantly. So that's just a little bit of a peek into, a promo like this, kind of what goes into it and all that. Yeah. So the report is the investment of the decade, 3 must-own stocks that will power blockchain's 295,000% revolution.
Yeah.
And of course, you got to buy a subscription to get the free report.
Yeah.
Which is called selling the premium. Most people try to sell the product and then give away bonuses. Agora figured out a long time ago that if you sell the bonus first and you get it free when you get the other thing, it's much more powerful.
Absolutely.
And still hardly anybody does it. I mean, nobody in the information marketing world, other than probably Agora and stuff, does it. It's just it's really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, because for the longest time, people are trying to throw in the bonuses. And the bonuses, if you kind of throw them in like as a kind of an afterthought, like, hey, you're going to get this, you kind of ignore it, right? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's great. So I'll get that bonus, but I'll probably won't even take a peek at it.
Well, you know where that goes back to? One of the people that did that, this premium selling is a Sports Illustrated. Back when they used to do like the football phone.
Oh yeah.
With your team logo. It's like they would start the commercial with, hey, get this cool football phone with your team's logo emblazoned on the top and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It's yours free when you get a subscription.
Absolutely.
Right. They didn't try to sell the subscription.
Yeah. The bonus was the key feature. Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas so many people make the mistake of like trying to sell their product or whatever they're trying to do. Yep. And just say, if you do this, we'll throw in this, which is like, who cares? Right.
Yeah. And what's most effective is to find the coolest little thing out of your whole program, like the one little thing that they would want, really play that up. Say, I'm going to give you this free when you try the product.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you don't love the product, keep the football phone. Like it's yours.
It's yours.
Right?
Yep.
And that's just, it's so much more powerful. And I'm just amazed how few people actually do that and use that tactic. It's just, it's a different way of thinking, and it just doesn't seem like it would work, but it's far more effective.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, man. Well, I guess we're not going to do a flight of persuasion. We'll just talk about that one thing. That's good.
It was a flight within a flight within a sales copy, a really good sales copy newsletter or a sales copy piece. So there's a lot of flights there.
For sure. Like there's a lot going on.
Persuasion flight within a letter.
For sure. All right.
Good stuff, man. And I'll probably post within our show page just so people can see the example. Not that we're trying to sell people on this, the Palm Beach letter. Yep. We just think it's really good copy. So,
it is.
I like to, I don't know about you, Sean, but like some of the best copywriters out there, it's good to like bookmark, we all talk about, you and I talk about a swipe file where we've got, pages torn out from old sales letters and things like that. Today's, like if you got a bookmark, if you can create a bookmark on your browser and put a lot of these, I keep a lot of Bob Bly's old stuff, a lot of his sales letters, a lot of his, one page, sales pages, that he's just, he's like one of the best at, creating bullets of any sales copy person I've ever read, but that's his thing. So he's worth, referring back to for stuff like that. But this one, for other reasons, you want to keep stuff like this on hand so you can take a look at. So
yeah, and the thing to do is to really go through it like we did and like really pull apart, like what are they doing? And if you write down kind of what they're doing each line and not the copy itself,
right,
and then use that as a template to write your copy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're using, they're trying to get your attention here with this piece of curiosity. They're adding this proof here from these companies. If you kind of write that down as what they're doing, and don't get so hung up on swiping the copy itself. If you're going to swipe something, swipe the format.
Yeah.
And what each sentence does, then you can write your own to match.
Right.
And a lot of people are trying to swipe copy itself, and it just doesn't work the same because you're going to start changing stuff. So yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's 2 or 3 things that I pulled just from this letter alone that I can use in my marketing, and it has nothing to do with financial copy. But it's like that's how it works. You take stuff from other industries and you learn.
That's one of the best ways. So go outside your industry.
So, all right. Well, guys, it's been fun. Sean, it's been fun. This is good stuff. As always, you can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms. And until next episode, we hope everyone has a great week.
See ya.
All right.